Everybody, welcome to this first webinar of the SEEV4-City series. I see that still attendees are showing up, so I'm going to be a bit patient before everyone is connected. I will start already with a short introduction for this webinar. So this webinar is recorded. You can view this afterwards. We will share all attendees the link with the video and the shown presentations if they are available. During this webinar, we will have for each speaker a short Q&A, so you can post your questions in the Q&A. We limited questions for each speaker to 5 minutes. At the end of the webinar, we can go further on general questions. Please only post questions, no statements will be handled. The questions can be upvoted, so the most popular questions will be handled priority. We will also do some polls in this webinar. We launched them during this webinar, and these are anonymous. Please participate. It's very valuable for us to get your insights on this. Next, we have a small disclaimer on this. Views, findings, and publications of this webinar do not necessarily represent the views or policies of the Interreg North Sea region, SEEV4-City, or its individual participants, nor does it necessarily represent the individual SEEV4-City participants. So this small disclaimer, this is a short program for this webinar. We have a small introduction. We talk about the pilot projects and conclusions at the end. Not all reports of the pilots are available yet. They will be shared by the websites from SEEV4-City later on, upon availability, of course. So, we have quite a lot of attendees for the moment, and we are very curious who is there. So, where the hell are you in the world? We are curious where you're coming from. I think a lot of people are, for the moment, home during this pandemic of COVID-19, unfortunately. This means also that we normally would welcome you in Oslo. This is not the case, unfortunately. So please vote. Go for a few seconds slower. I see the majority is coming from Europe. Seems logic for me. We took the time frame in the afternoon so that also people from Asia and America could join. And this seems also be the case. So very happy with those ones. Hello America, hello Asia, hello Africa as well. I don't see anyone from Arctica or Antarctica. Yeah. I will end this poll and will share you the results of this. So you see that indeed 94% of our participants are coming from the region of Europe. Now we are curious what you're doing in your daily life. If you are coming from a business perspective, if you're in a more on school and university, public authority, agency, or maybe you don't work at all and you have a general interest in vehicle to grid. Who knows? Also there the answers are coming in. This just gives us a small insight of our audience. It's still running. Numbers are very differentiated. I will stop from here and share the results. So yeah, the biggest group comes from business support organizations and quite some from private enterprises, largest and SMEs. So far so good. I'm very happy to introduce you to the first two speakers. This is Robert van den Hoed and Hugo Niesing. If you have questions about vehicle to grid, people are the Wikipedias of this topic. So please, Robert, please, Hugo, take over from here.
Thank you, Philip. I will share my presentation. Can you confirm that it's on?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, Wikipedia of this topic, speaking with Hugo Niesing. Great to be well on this platform. We'd love to have presented our work in Oslo on the same day physically, but that has not been possible, unfortunately. But we're very happy to do it in this way with such a great audience. So we're very thrilled to be able to present our work of results of about 3.5 years work on this project called SEEV4-City, Sustainable Energy and Electric Vehicles for the City Environment. So that's the whole focus of our project, which really was anticipated about 5 years ago. And we would firstly like to thank the Interreg North Sea Region Program, because it has allowed us to do applied research on this topic, which is thrilling and exciting and urgent at the same time. The combination of renewable energies, electric vehicles, and vehicle-to-grid technologies, if you combine that to new renewable energy programs, that's really going to create all kinds of new challenges and opportunities and solutions. And that's what SEEV4-City project is all about. So this afternoon you will have a host and a suite of demonstration projects and results. So that's going to really go in detail. What me and Hugo will be presenting is a short overview of the whole background and motivation why we anticipated on this project in the first place, before we go in depth. So for that, the whole origin really started with the 3 big trends on solar, which is increasing very rapidly, electric mobility, which is coming at us at an enormous speed, and there's opportunities of using electric vehicles and batteries in a whole different way and combining that to new solutions. Hugo, maybe you can say something about how this project originated.
Yes, Robert, thank you very much. Well, you see this beautiful image. It is like yesterday, but it's more than 5 years ago. It was the mobility revolution, the solar and electrical mobility revolution conference that we organized in the University of Applied Science in Amsterdam, which was the final participation of another North Sea region program, eHarbors, which was focusing on flexibility already in those years. And yeah, if you can go to the next slide, we can see, well, yes, it was March 15, remember. But it really, it's 5 years ago, but it feels like it has been 3 months ago. Now, this conference we organized with a group of people with that at the end was 60% of the SEEV4-City initiative. I remember the University of Newcastle, the Arena, the Municipality of Amsterdam. Oh, and everybody on that conference, when V2G was just like, hey, this is technically possible, what can we do with it, was eager to show it, to put it into practice. Also, at the end of that conference, we developed a roadmap. And this roadmap has some nice ingredients. It's not in a good timing. It's not adequate to see what policies are being doing now. But if you look to the 3 red surrounded circles, solar as a main energy source in EU cities. Well, we are now 2020. This one foresees it in 1819. Smart ICT, steering energy as a as a cheap option in order to avoid costs. I think we're not yet there, not even in the coming coming years, but maybe in 2025, and battery prices, but we'll get back to that. This is a very funny thing to look back and see what we thought and how things are now developing. And everything is summarized in one beautiful graph. And this graph is displaying in blue the energy consumption by households or by offices, which peaks in the morning and it peaks in the afternoon. And especially households here are now in cities, including as well electric mobility. In the middle, you see the sun with the light blue area is where your own consumption is covered by production. And in the darker, it's beyond the solar hours. Of course, this depends over the season, but the trend is that we're building more and more demand by electrification of a very energy intensive usage, our mobility. And what we wanted to show is the image on the right, how to flatten out these peaks in the morning and in the afternoon, evening, and to show that with smart charging or vehicle to grid energy provision by these mobile batteries can make a change. Okay, this looks easy, but it's quite complex. Can we go to the next slide, Robert? Well, we see solar booming. We see solar growing by 30% over the last years. Of course, this is varying highly between the different continents, between the different member states in the EU. But now we really see a development. And for that, I would like to have a short focus on our hometown, Amsterdam. If Amsterdam is showing a very strong growth. At the left, we see the Netherlands in total, where we've been growing from 2 megawatts in 2015 to almost 7.5 in 19, but especially the last 2 years are very remarkable. You see 40 and 60% of increase upon the total installed capacity. And if we can go to the next one, you can see that Amsterdam has a solar policy. To 2020 is the solar year for Amsterdam. Let's see if we can still realize that in spite of the corona crisis that we're having. But the idea is that Amsterdam makes 200 megawatts in 2022. That is in 2 years from now. Well, in the Eastern Harbor area, if you compare that to the amount of people, that should be 7 megawatts. Now, what we see, and if we go to the next slide, is that there is a high potential. There can be installed almost 30 megawatts in this area. But what is now there, and then we can go to the next one. Here, green is what is very fitted for solar. Blue is in between, it's okay, but not optimal, and red is not well. And then, if we go to the next slide, sorry, Robert, then you see what is actually installed. And as it's so little, I mark them with the yellow circles. But it has been growing from 0 8 years ago to a megawatt to now 1.6 megawatt. And if we multiply that for 4 years, then we're at that 7. And then in 6 years, we will be reaching the 20 that we want to have in this area. And that is going to be a game changer in a production peak point of view. Can we go to the next? First, it was 1%, now it's 7%. But as I said earlier, I think, and I'm not even thinking that, convinced that the lessons that we've been learning in our pilots, which are in all kinds of city situations, different levels, different scales, we're going to have a lot of benefit from those in the coming 5 years. Robert, you go for the EVs.
Thank you, Hugo. So definitely all kinds of policymakers, cities will be confronted by this growth of solar locally. And the second trend which is coming towards them is this challenge about electric vehicles, where you see that, well, electric mobility is getting towards that tipping point where it's getting cheaper to drive electric than in a combustion engine. So just looking at the numbers, looking back at 2015, we had about 1.2 million electric vehicles on the road worldwide. In 2018, we're close to 5 million. And in 2020, approximated, we are about 6 to 7 million electric vehicles. So in a few years' time, we've got a 6 times acceleration of this market. That's fast. And that's confronting a number of leading companies with quite some problems already, because the share of electric vehicles is getting very high. A particular example, of course, is Norway, where 60% of all sold vehicles in 2019 is electric, has a plug. The majority of being full electric vehicles. A smaller share is for plug-in electric vehicles. But 60%, that basically means that internal combustion engines from 2019 onwards may have a minority share in the next couple of years. And that's just the exemplary state, so to say, where it might be heading. And the Netherlands is another case where in 2019, the best sold car was the Tesla Model 3. And not by 10 or 20%, but by a factor of 2.5 to 3 to the runner-up. So what you're seeing here is we're getting used to the idea that electric vehicles are not a minority stake, that they're not a very small market share, but it's actually leading the pack. And we expect the number of electric vehicle models increasing in the next couple of years. So what's the major driver for that? That's battery prices. Battery prices have been decreasing for a number of years now with an incredible rapid pace. In 10 years' time, we expect that, in 10 years' time, we've seen that the battery prices have decreased with 80%. And in a number of years, we hope to get some kind of cost parity with internal combustion engines, where in particular segments, particular more expensive segments, it's more attractive to drive electric than internal combustion engine from a cost economic point of view. So basically where that ends up with is that electric vehicles are both an iPad and a battery on wheels. So it's an iPad because it's basically a huge amount of software which is driving it. And it's a huge battery as well, which is not used for 90% of the time because it's standing still. What can you do with this battery? That's something we need to harvest in some way. And that's what SEEV4-City has been about all the time. So harvesting that requires other technology like vehicle-to-grid. Hugo. Back to you. You're muted, Hugo.
I need to unmute myself, sorry. Yeah. So we see these two separate developments, which each on its own is nice, but also is causing severe problems. And we are not yet in those severe problems, but we are at the edge. And we have been playing around, looking around in the project with those. And one of the solutions that we were so much looking at in 2015 was vehicle to grid. How an electric vehicle can not only take, but also provide electricity to the house, to the grid, to the office. And can we go for the next slide, Robert? The costs of vehicle to grid hardware is still a hurdle. We started at 20K. We now see that prices are going down maybe to 10K, but it is still a main thing to arrange. Another one, I can give 2 clicks on the follow-up because I forgot to take out the, yes. What we do see is that back in 2015, we were looking to a couple of experiments over the world. Now we see over 50 projects inside Europe, in the United States, and in Asia. It's really going out. And a market is there when you have a large share of vehicles, and it's still complex, but it is now really coming. And the last thing that I also circled is the integration. Integration is also super complex because electric vehicle charging uses a lot of energy, but you also have heat pumps in the built environment. You have the industry. You have all kind of different players using, giving, storing energy in the same grid. How to smart integrate those is the challenge of the coming decade. And the last one, I think I also did add, that's the grid impact. We both stressed the incredible increase in both mobility and solar energy in the city. We will have problems if we continue at this pace, and therefore we will provide knowledge through SEEV4-City. Giving back the floor to you, Robert.
So the last time, so you don't get crazy about the changes all the time. So that was the starting point, these three big developments. 5 years ago at this conference, we thought we need to do something about it. Combine our knowledge on renewable energy, electric vehicles, and vehicle grid, and make something applied and demonstratable. So we were very happy to get the support from Interreg North Sea Region program on a particular priority, promoting green transport and mobility. And for the last couple of 3.5 years, we've been running this project with this 5 million budget and a consortium of 10 partners. And the coordination was at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. Project objectives, well, basically to demonstrate both the technical and business feasibility of these new renewable energy systems, which are based on renewables, battery electric vehicles, and V2G, vehicle to grid or smart charging functionality. That was the core of what we're trying to do, and we wanted to do that in a way through a multitude of operational pilots. So not only research, really getting it out there, showing it, and use applied research to get the best of it. And we're trying to evaluate then on three what we call key performance indicators if these projects are attractive: CO2 emissions, energy autonomy, and grid investments. And particularly the last one is really hard to tackle. So that's what we've been focusing on. And then operationalizing that, we basically said we need to apply and demonstrate this vehicle to grid technology on a number of aggregation levels, all from household level to neighborhood level to even utility and stadium level. And we've been able to do that, and we're going to be very thrilled to be able to present the results today with a number of partners. I hope you enjoy today's webinar. If there's any questions, I look forward to that. Philip, I give the floor back to you.
Yes, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Hugo. Here we go back to the Q&A. We have some questions ready for you. First question that pops up the most, I hope that you can follow them, is big driver of vehicle grid can be variable kilowatt hour prices over a day or 24 hours. Do we foresee this for Europe? Hugo, Robert, who will answer on this?
I think for the Netherlands, it will still take a while, and you need experiment status because this is regulation enforced. I'm afraid. What, Robert?
Yes, I think it's going to be one of the conditions you need, but not the only condition. So you've got a lot of this variability in energy prices needs to be very high, but we see a lot of developments in demand side management, which will also have an evening out effect on this variability of prices. So it's really a complex system with not only electric vehicles, but a lot of industry, a lot of parties on the demand and the supply side, which need to be covered. The higher the variability in prices, definitely vehicle to grid will have a better impact and attractiveness. So yes, agree, but it's not the only factor.
Okay, second question. Are those arrays in Amsterdam connected to the medium or low voltage grid? It's a more technical question.
Yeah, they're all household installations to the low voltage grid.
Okay, and then the last question that popped up. One of the main pros for the customer to buy an EV instead of gas one is the significantly smaller operating costs. In opposition to its main con, which is the initial costs, how will a historically low Brent price for oil impact the main advantage for EV? How will sales react?
Yes, well, oil, the prices for oil, of course, will have a major impact. Agree, operation costs are very low for electric vehicles. To be honest, I think what we're seeing with these battery prices is that the initial costs are not going to be factors higher than internal combustion engine vehicles in a number of years. We're seeing that already a little bit. But in 3 to 5 years' time, my guess is that prices will become close to cost parity, including as operational costs. And then, yes, gasoline prices will play a role, but I don't see that coming to a point where electricity prices will be even lower.
Electricity prices also were dropping, so that's also going in parallel, apparently. I see some few questions coming up, which is probably a mix of both can be answered. Electric vehicle to grid solutions, when they will be available for CCS charging points. Those two questions can be combined. We know that it's for the moment limited to the Shadow protocol. Robert?
Yeah, definitely. This is a main barrier at this moment. We can only work with a few OEMs to work with vehicle to grid. I think the pilots which we're carrying out now, and Hugo mentioned it, 5 years ago we had 10. We've got at least 50 now, but I think more than getting close to 100 of vehicle to grid projects, which shown how this technology works. And the better it works, it will also entice other OEMs to start thinking about providing this vehicle to grid compatibility. So it's also a chicken and egg problem. If this technology is available there, OEMs will tend to follow also. So it's a chicken and egg problem.
Okay, we have to wrap up from here. I think we're running out of time already. I'm pleased to announce the next speaker, Jan Winkler. He's linked to the arena from Amsterdam. Jan, to introduce yourself, you take over the screen.
I will take over the screen. Here we go. So, hello everyone. My name is Jan Winkler. I'm working for the Mobility House. We are a technology company based in Munich, focusing on creating the maximum or making maximum use and creating value from EV batteries. And today I will present the results or intermediate results from two projects that we did at the Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam, the football stadium where Ajax Amsterdam is playing, and also the Dutch national team for the most part. We did these together with some partners that I want to mention briefly. That is, for one, the BAM. BAM is the biggest construction and electric installation company in the Netherlands. Then the Amsterdam Clean Tech Investment Fund, AUAS, and of course the arena itself also was a major partner in this project. Nissan and Eaton contributed with their technologies, and of course a big thank you to the SEEV4-City project and the Interreg EU initiative, because without their support, also projects like these, which are just very much on the R&D side and testing new technologies, would be nearly impossible to conduct. I will tell a little storyline about what we did in Amsterdam and in the arena and guide you through the two projects. Starting with a very, not very specific note, that in general managing energy within buildings is and has always been a challenge. If we look at the Johan Cruyff Arena, then we can take the perspective of looking at it from an energy perspective, which is the one that we as a company always take, and then it becomes a very interesting building. The reason is that the arena in certain situations, on the upper left side, if you see during an event, during a game or concert, the power peak goes quite high and they need up to 3 megawatts of power. In off-peak times during the night and when there are no events, which is the most part of the week, obviously, the consumption is lower. It's never zero. There's always some load because, for instance, the grass is lighted or other devices in the building keep running. But it would be around 700, 800 kilowatts then. They also have two backup engines. Those are diesel generators. They can create up to 700 kilowatts. So you see, never enough to keep the game running, but always enough to ensure that the stadium could be evacuated in a safe way. They also have a PV system on the roof, which provides up to 1 megawatt peak power on a sunny day. In 2018, we brought into operation in the arena the first multi-use battery storage in a building like this that was built out of exclusively out of EV batteries, so electric vehicle batteries. They have been driving, for a large part of these batteries have been driving before, so they are second life batteries, which have been in use in Nissan Leaf cars and actually been driving around. And then Eaton and Nissan refurbished them and packaged them so that we put them in these battery racks and can use them as a large-scale battery now. If you look at the image on the left side, I will try to show it here. If you have 4 of these battery packs, they used to be one Nissan Leaf in the past, and they have been restacked now in this way, making up in total a battery that has now the dimensions of 3 megawatts in power and 2.8 megawatt hours in energy. So you can see this 3 megawatt now relates exactly to the total maximum load that the arena has. So it would be possible in the event of a blackout to provide power to the stadium and do that for, as you can see from the energy side, for nearly 1 hour, which should be enough to bring a game to its end. You would probably not start kicking off a game when the lights go out. But at least you can bridge 1 halftime and definitely make sure that the people can have a safe and enjoyable experience to the end. The system is controlled by this device, which is our controller, that we use to manage, in the end, EV batteries. For us, this battery storage is 148 Nissan Leaf batteries, and in the future, we want to be able to do the same that we do here with cars that are parked in a parking garage, on a park deck, or somewhere in a building, at a company building or something like that. The services we were able to apply here range from, of course, the obvious, providing backup power to the stadium during events, increasing the share of renewables used locally. We provide grid services to stabilize the grid. We connected, and I will show that later, to a vehicle-to-grid system and charging systems, and provide peak shaving to reduce the maximum power that the arena needs to take from the grid. In a typical week, this is taking from November last year, this is what the storage would be doing, the battery. During the week, it will be running in what we call frequency reserve capacity market. So it will provide a grid service that helps to stabilize the grid by reacting to frequency shifts and counteracting these. Power is constantly going up and down. And for this, we can create certain revenues throughout the year, which is important, of course, because we need to gain back some of the money that needs to be invested in such a device. As you can imagine, this is not a very cheap battery to build, but luckily there are some mechanisms where you can earn money on the grid markets. Whenever there is an event, like in this case, the Netherlands playing against Estonia, you can see it was a successful game for first, but secondly, our storage was not doing anything, and this is exactly what it should do. We charged it to full and then let it wait. If there was a blackout, it would have kicked in and provided the power to the stadium. So far, there hasn't been any blackout, so I cannot show you how this is working, but we tested it, of course, thoroughly. With this done, we felt that we were to have reached a point where the arena energy challenges for now seem to have been solved. And this was true until spring last year, because in spring 2019, City of Amsterdam decided to adopt a very ambitious roadmap moving towards an emission-free transportation by 2030. You see these different circles. I will not go into details. This is applying for 2025 already. A lot of cars and buses and coaches and boats even have to be fully electric within this area. The key that I want to show is this green circle, which is reflecting a zone around the city of Amsterdam, where by 2030, no single car will be allowed that is not driving electric and is causing any emissions. And you can see the arenas within this green line. So this means that if we look at the arena now, not taking the energy angle from a first perspective, but look at it from a parking perspective, they have around 2,000, even a bit more parking spaces. And in the future, if we look towards 2030, how can I get rid of this? Perfect. These 2,000 parking spaces could be filled during an AUAS game with electric cars. And if that's the case, then we can expect that there would be a total combined battery capacity of 100 megawatt hours connected to the arena. 100 megawatt hours, comparing that again to what I've shown before, the battery storage that we built, which is really a big thing, filling a full room. it has 2.8 megawatt hours. Now we are looking at 100 megawatt hours. And if we also add some charging to this, so say every second parking space also has a charger connected to it, it will also relate to a large amount of power that in a certain situation could be charged into the cars, which could be up to 20 megawatts in total. Currently, the maximum peak in the arena is 3 megawatts. So adding 20 megawatts of that, on top of that, you see there will be a major challenge. And that led us to the conclusion the biggest challenge has not been resolved yet. It's coming towards us. And we, together with the arena and the partners, decided that it was time to take the next step and now also make use of mobile EV batteries that can be still within the car. For this, we took a step that is integrate the EV charging points in a smart way. We installed 14 charging points, each with up to 22 kilowatts of power, and connected them with our device again, as it's the same one I've shown before, to control the charging and make smart charging possible. We also connected the battery system to the PV system on the roof and to the smart meters in the building. All this was done by BAM, the electric company, as a partner. By doing that, we were able to reduce the maximum power that the chargers could provide, from 300 kVA to 150, so cut it in half, which immediately upon installation saved 15,000 euros. But more importantly, it gives us control over these charging processes, and we will be able to, in the future, make sure that the energy into the car is charged, for instance, when PV power is available or when energy prices are cheap. So I really hope, this was one of the questions we've seen before, that very soon we will see flexible energy tariffs. They are not there yet, but as soon as they are, we will make use of them for sure. If you look at what is possible here with 14 chargers, then this is just a blink of the potential what we have if we have 2,000 charge points connected in the arena, because of course there's much more you can do with 2,000, and if you scale it up, it's an enormous amount of power that can be controlled, and we can make sure not to overshoot the grid limit and bring the local grid into jeopardy. Step 2 is turn electric vehicles into real power plants. And by that we mean that we now also install the bidirectional charger. You can see the bidirectional charger here. As Hugo said before, this came as a price of around 20,000 euros. That is why we installed only one. We would have liked to install 100 or 50. This at the moment is not possible to finance. So in any case, with the help of the SEEV4-City, we were able to acquire this nice little device, and we connected Nissan Leafs to it. The arena has 2 Nissan Leafs that we can use, one at a time, obviously. And we add this just as a extension of the 148 Nissan Leaf that we have in the room in the large battery storage. Now, what can we do with this? Basically, we can do whatever has been shown before. So whatever the batteries in the basement can do is also possible to do with one car. So we can, of course, optimize the PV consumption. We can provide backup power. Requires a bit of electric installation around it, but it's well possible to do that. We provide grid services to the grid. We do the peak shaving and help the arena reduce its maximum power intake. This is what we did during Christmas holidays. We connected the Nissan Leaf to the bidirectional charger, and we had it help stabilize the European grid. What you see here is the 2 curves, and the upper curve is showing the grid frequency. Now, whenever grid frequency is going below a certain value, then that means there's too little power in the system, and we then automatically inject power in the system. So the car starts discharging. Here you can see it even a bit clearer. Here frequency is dropping, power starts discharging, and that helping stabilizing the grid. And if you do that, as shown before, there's a certain willingness by the TSO, so the grid operator, which is TenneT in the Netherlands, to pay you for that. And on a virtual basis, we earned 50 euros during that week of providing FCR, frequency control services, to the grid. Of course, we also noticed what can happen if you do that with the car, because somebody also, we had actually booked it for the whole week, and it was in the middle of the Christmas days, 22nd of December, somebody decided to take the car for a tour of 5 hours, and that of course means we dropped out of the frequency control. One of the key changes is challenges that we are working on and that we're struggling with, of course, we need to learn about when we move forward and not use battery storage, which you can control, but use cars that are owned by people and they may make any use of them that they want. And this, of course, means much more user interaction that will be needed in the future. With this, I conclude. Those were the two projects I wanted to present. We are finished with the installation. We are not finished with making the what we want to achieve in the arena, and we still have the vision of bringing this whole ecosystem into operation during a major event in the arena. We wanted to do that right now and even moving forward in the direction of the European Championship. At the moment, of course, this is not possible, but we hope to, at a point in the future, be able to do that and show the combined power of mobile batteries and the stationary storage that we set up in the arena within one system, and to demonstrate this very unique project even more when it all comes together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. On top of this, we have prepared some questions. So we will launch a poll for our attendees. When out of 100 electric vehicles sold in Europe in 2025, how many do you expect will be technically fit for bidirectional charging? So what is our audience thinking about this?
You mean out of 1 million, I guess, then?
Sorry?
I think the numbers don't match quite, right? We need, but out of 1 million electric vehicles.
Yeah, we adapted the answers a bit more positive in numbers.
Yeah, but it will be difficult to say out of 100, 1 million.
Yeah. Understood. We have quite some votes coming in. We'll let it run a few seconds more. I will stop from here. Any comment on this? I will share the results.
Yeah, okay. I guess that the statement is it will be a minor share, and I think that's very reasonable thinking. It was mentioned before. At the moment there's only the CHAdeMO technology that allows bidirectional charging, and there's only 2 manufacturers, and even they only in certain cars allow it. Even for Renault, they have it, but there is no car in the market that can do it right now. I believe 2025 we will see more of that, but it will definitely take some time before this is a general part of EVs that are sold in the European markets.
Yeah, indeed. We have another question prepared for our audience. Where do you see the biggest potential for bidirectional charging? There's 4 options possible, from private housing to companies, semi-public or public parking. Coming back to the previous question, of course, from our point of view, we hope that the sky is indeed the limit. Keep it positive. People are more positive in answering on this one. Keep a few seconds longer. And there we go. From here, and poll, and I will share the results with you. Any surprise from your point of view, Jan?
No, I think that's exactly what I would assume as well. Especially in Germany right now, there's a lot of battery storage, small systems sold for much money for residential homes, so they can increase their PV consumption. People invest money where in the future they could just use their cars, so that makes immediate sense. And then public parking, definitely always the challenge. How do you make it possible? People, if I connect my car on a public charging spot, I want to be given full power immediately, I guess. But if I charge at my company, I may be willing to allow them to stretch that a bit and make other use.
Then we have our last question. Should vehicle-to-grid technology receive special funding from governments? Yes or no? It's only 2 options in this case. I think also the background of our attendees will lead us to a differentiated answer. Yeah, votes are still coming in. I think we can go to conclude on this. Yeah, we'll stop it from here and we'll share you the results. Difference is not that big.
Would be nice. I would not complain at all. That would be very helpful, because right now the investment costs are just really high. At some point in the future, of course, we want this technology to be able to create value, and this is our ambition as a company to make this create value. For this, the key thing for my perspective, more important than funding from governments, would be even that we get soon to certain standards, and that this, especially the ISO 15118 now is passed, and that it becomes, the system is clarified for CCS bi-directional charging technology, then that can help bring it to the market faster. And of course, customer demand will be needed for that.
Okay, good. Then we can move to our Q&A.
That would be great. Very good questions I see there. Very interesting.
I have a few questions. We will go shortly to them. First question is about, I think it's about the Amsterdam Arena. Is this also applicable for bus depot charging?
Yes, absolutely. That is our focus, and we have been happy that Connection, the bus operator, one of the larger budget bus operators in the Netherlands, has chosen our systems for the bus depot near Schiphol Airport. We are managing a bus fleet there. This at the moment mostly or unidirectional, so control the charging processes. But V2G charging for buses will definitely be a key possibility in the future.
Then you mentioned it already. It's actually statements. The ISO 15118 norm is coming up. That will be a solution for many.
That's what I hear this timeline as well. I think it hopefully end of this year would be great. And then, of course, car manufacturers still need some time to implement it in their roadmaps and bring it into the cars.
And the next question, if vehicle-to-grid enabled cars and chargers become mainstream, and there are many at the arena, will user behavior still be a relevant factor affecting vehicle-to-grid availability?
I guess the question means if you have a large enough pool, do you still have to rely on individual choices? And I guess we actually believe that, or we think that in the future it will be possible to work with mathematical models and assume that if you have a pool of 500,000 cars, that there will always be a certain size of this fleet available. Then even if one individual drops out, then you can still go ahead. But that, of course, is true only for services that you do where you can aggregate large pools, which could be the case in the arena as well. So yeah, good point. The smaller the pool, as of now, if we work with one charger and that car is gone, then we are in big trouble. If the charger numbers and the car numbers get higher, then we rely a bit less on individual choices.
I have another question which seems quite popular. It's limited, of course. What does 5G mean for mass deployment of vehicle-to-grid?
A very good question. I will have to pass on that. I'm not sure. I cannot say anything. I know that V2G will be, the arena in Amsterdam is a testing ground for V2G, for 5G technology. So I hope that we can get these systems or learnings from that soon than there, but I don't feel fit to answer that question.
Fair enough. We go to the last question. How are you planning to implement vehicle-to-grid provision from enough EV users? Will TMH estimate the availability of EVs at the arena to bid for services? Do you have any methodology in plan?
As said, it depends a bit on what we want to achieve. There's some things for grid services, for instance, where we need to have a very clear availability of power, and where the grid operator also demands certain, that you make sure that this is always in place. There is a challenge. In other parts, we can maybe be a bit more flexible. It is something that it is the project phase that will, or is now currently under investigating. We have been very busy setting up these systems and getting them to work and do the proof of concept user interaction and finding out how we can work with that in larger numbers is what is our focus for this year.
Okay, thank you. It gives us quite some good insights in a quite big project that has been developed recently. We're gonna take a small break with a very short video. I have difficulties to find it back somehow now. What did I do? Let me take a look at it. Here it is. It's a video of 2 minutes. Please enjoy it, and we come back very shortly to you. And how do I? Here we go. Thank you, Jan.
Wat wij gedaan hebben, wij hebben gezegd van, als wij energie opwekken, hoe kunnen we die energie opslaan om het moment te gebruiken dat we nodig
Good. We are back in. It seems that there was some difficulties with the sound and on the video. We will share with. I'm going to share for sure the link. It's to find on YouTube. Meanwhile, we are ready to announce our next speaker, and this will be Chris Randall. Chris, are you there?
Hello?
Here, Chris. I hear you.
Okay,
You take over the screen
I'll take over the screen.
and launch your presentation, please.
Yes. I think it's here. Is this it? No. Excuse me a minute.
Here we go.
So try. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
Oh, wait a moment. Right. Is it gonna? How do I run through this? Oh,
I cannot help you from here, Chris. So
no, I don't know what I don't know what is happening here. Do you want to move to another speaker and I see if I don't know what's happened.
check if Chris is ready. Chris Rimmer.
Yes, I can be.
Can you take over? The order of speakers is luckily not relevant for the moment. So
Sure, let me just enter presenter mode. Thank you very much for all the various questions and everybody's engagement on the Q&A. Hopefully our answers are being helpful. It's my pleasure to join my colleagues from across various parts of Europe in this project. And I wish to talk to you a little bit about the view, not from an enormous stadium where a famous football team plays, but a simple house in Burton-upon-Trent in the UK. I trust, Philippe, you can see my screen now. Great. So I want to talk about Quirks, Curiosities and Conclusions today. And so just for a little bit of background, I work for an organisation called Cenex. We are a small independent not-for-profit consultancy based in the UK. And we spend our time talking about low carbon transport and looking to reduce emissions from transport. And we've done a lot of work in vehicle to grid. And we also run the UK's largest low carbon vehicle show, which you're all invited to. It's free, though you will have to get yourselves there, and hopefully we'll all be out of lockdown by the time that goes in September. Firstly, I just wanted to start with some brief definitions. A quirk, for those for whom English is not a first language, is a peculiar aspect of a person's character or behaviour, and a curiosity, I'm sure you're very familiar with, is an unusual or interesting object or fact. And so I've named my presentation today Quirks and Curiosities because we've been exploring vehicle for energy services at this house in the middle of the UK at a place called Burton-on-Trent. Now, vehicle for energy services is the intelligent management of storage and electrical vehicles to provide services to the electricity system. And it's based on technology-driven solutions. So, as you've heard already in other pilots and pieces, storage, on-site generation, the charging and discharging of vehicles. But also it then is looking to deliver benefits to multiple players in the electricity system. So we're trying to get energy autonomy potentially for the host, some ancillary services, environmental benefits and so on. And yes, I believe that V4ES, Vehicle for Energy Services, is a term that we've made up, but it particularly encapsulates the kinds of things that we've been investigating in houses, neighbourhoods, buildings, communities, all the way up to car parks and stadia. Just very quickly, I wanted to share, as I had done in a previous presentation, many of which are available on our website, our history follows the Gartner curve, which some of you, I'm sure, are very aware of. There's an initial technology trigger, and this for us was the kickoff of the project. And so there is then this amazing peak of inflated expectations, and Cenex was involved in installing in this project the first vehicle to home unit in a domestic setting in the UK. Unfortunately then, as those of you who know the curve are aware, you then hit the trough of disillusionment when the realism of what you're trying to achieve kicks in. And for us, that was when the first unit failed about a year later. And here it is, beautifully adorning our meeting room wall. And thankfully, we did also continue to follow the curve, and through the slope of enlightenment, as we found a new site, and we've then been able to move to a second phase, the so-called plateau of productivity. And so just for my short slot today, I want to observe some quirks and curiosities that we have found out from this second phase as we've moved from vehicle to home, that is the electric vehicle providing services into the house, to a true vehicle to grid solution with solar generation and battery storage. I won't dwell on the technicalities, but those of you that follow the slides afterwards, it's just always helpful to see what it is we're dealing with. So it's a very small PV array with an even smaller battery, and we're using Moixa as the system to control that. We have a 2018 Nissan Leaf using the CHAdeMO protocol that I know has come up in some of the questions. And then OVO Energy, who are an energy supplier in the UK, have supplied the vehicle to grid unit. Typically, this would be 7.3 kilowatts charge and discharge, but we'll touch on this later. For a particular reason, it was limited in its discharge. Our first phase was very much proof of concept, early technology, which suffered from reliability problems, hence disillusionment, but thankfully with a market-ready product backed by commercial SLAs and guarantees and warranties, from 2019 onwards, we've had a much more reliable system. So we're still analysing our data, and we hope to release some reports with the help of our colleagues, particularly from HVA and KU Leuven and the University of Northumbria. But here are 4 thoughts just to spark your interest about the quirks and curiosities that we have found. And the first is this: we've found networks, that is distribution networks, to be both a help and a hindrance. You're all a very educated audience, I'm sure, and so you will know that they are essential to the operation of the electricity system, and of course bearing the brunt of the sustainable energy and electric vehicle revolution. Peak loads are increasing, electric flow is changing, not all one way, legislation is evolving in terms of what is required, and yet that means they are a massive help because they are producing value pools for this vehicle for energy services, this bi-directional charging, discharging of electric vehicles, the storage and the release of energy. However, and this answers Arturo's question, their constraints also hinder, and this is why I think we see them as both a help and a hindrance. And the simple reason is that on our site, the 3.68 kilowatt discharge is limited because of the network constraint. And so the very constraint that provides a value pool, that requires flexibility, that requires management, is also constraining our ability to access that value pool. Just got a little picture here to illustrate it. Here you can see it in the pink curve, the imported energy across certain time, and then in the green color, the exported energy. And so here the vehicle is being charged on this particular day, I think it was the 8th of April, ready for the afternoon peak. But the export limitation prevented us from getting greater value from the home because the unit itself has been derated in order not to make the network struggle. So my first takeaway is simply that the areas of the network, it seems to us, that most need V4ES are also most likely to place limitations on its operation. Secondly, and I've worked very hard to alliterate this, equipment efficiency erodes effectiveness. So the UK lockdown and other lockdowns around Europe have been a difficult time, and I'm very grateful for technology to allow us to present to you. But it has allowed us to explore the efficiency of the system itself. You see, our EV has, as you'd expect, been very stationary storage. The energy is, of course, metered as it comes into the home, converted AC to DC to charge the EV, sits in the EV, which isn't driving, and then the battery discharges, converted back to AC before being metered as it's released into the home or the grid. Now, when we've noticed that there's no driving, the energy that's imported and exported on a daily basis correlates, and we've managed to find out that the round-trip efficiency of this system is around 78%. You can see here, again, another image just to illustrate this. Up the left-hand side, the energy exported, across the bottom, the energy imported. This is exported from the vehicle and imported into the vehicle. And I've highlighted here in the yellow the non-driving days. You can see there's a very clear correlation. When the energy is not used for driving, we can get a handle on the round-trip efficiency. And that's quite important. At Cenex, we do a lot of modeling of the value of vehicle to grid and vehicle for energy services. And we always assume an efficiency. This is starting to give us operational data into that. So the round-trip efficiency has a significant impact on the effectiveness to deliver benefits. We cannot simply assume that 100% of energy in is energy out. Number 3, then, on our whistle-stop tour of Burton-upon-Trent, we've actually found that vehicle for energy services increases consumption, which might be a little counterintuitive. However, as you can imagine, energy flows to and from the assets in the home, in this case, or in the Johan Cruyff arena or wherever. Energy is imported to charge the EV and exported to discharge it. When we turned on the vehicle for energy services, that is, we started discharging from our electric vehicle as well as simply charging it, we found that there was an increase in the import into the home of around about 9%. This kind of makes sense because this is replacing the energy that's exported for those services. Now, the supplier of the site uses an export credit system to try and account for this, so the customer is not out of pocket, but they're only valued at a quarter of the cost of importing energy. And so there's a net increase. Now it's small for a home, £20 maybe, €25 per year, but at scale, this could represent an additional cost. And so we mustn't simply think that this kind of service will save energy. It in fact increases consumption. And you can see here then just a chart also to illustrate that. In January, when the vehicle was merely charging, we saw a slightly lower mean import, and then it stepped up when the vehicle for energy services was active in February. We went down into our lockdown in March, and so this is not affected by COVID at this stage. So any commercial V4ES solution must ensure that the customer is not out of pocket. And then lastly, to keep us moving through the program, the controls must communicate. So we have in our phase 2 pilot systems from 2 commercial suppliers. I brushed over that very quickly just at the beginning of the presentation. We have different control strategies, therefore, and they are in fact informed by different data points. So on the one hand, the PV, the stationary battery, and the energy manager tracks the household energy balance and is attempting to make the most of self-consumption. But on the other hand, the vehicle to grid, or the vehicle for energy services, and the back-end solution tracks grid services and grid revenues, and obviously seeks to maximize that. Now, thus far, we've found they play well together, unlike they've not conflicted, but we also see that they miss opportunities to take advantage of a holistic view. And in fact, Monday just gone, the 20th of April, was a great example of that. So a final chart for you. Up the left here, the power used or released, the time across the bottom. And you can see here in blue, the household consumption. In yellow, a beautiful solar generation curve. Don't often get cloudless days in the UK, but it was one of those. And then here, the power flowing into the battery, positive, or out of the battery, where it's negative in green. So this colleague of mine needed to go to the hospital. He's okay, by the way. The vehicle was boosted for a trip, so charge kicked in and it was starting to increase the charge of the EV. The battery therefore responded by discharging. Remember that the vehicle is controlled by the V2G system and the battery by the energy manager. So what we have is energy flowing from the battery, stationary battery, into the vehicle. When the boost ended, the V4ES system then initiated an export from the EV. So we've just boosted it. It then decided it wanted to export its energy back to the grid. There's the 78% efficiency again. And the battery responded by charging. So we then moved energy back out of the EV into the battery. And of course, there must be opportunities to improve and optimize on this. Therefore, our feeling is, and this isn't too much of a surprise, that the best systems here must include a holistic view of all energy flows and coordinate the assets in some sort of hierarchy of control. So from our end, Quirks and Curiosities, networks are both a help and a hindrance, and therefore those areas that most need these kind of services are most likely also to require limitations on its operation. The equipment efficiency erodes effectiveness, has a significant impact on the ability to deliver benefits. It does in fact increase consumption, and therefore any commercial solutions must ensure the customer's not out of pocket. And the controls themselves must communicate, particularly in a house like this, which is way beyond many UK houses in having generation storage and a bi-directional charger. The best systems will include a holistic view of all energy flows and coordinate those assets. That's about everything from me. There will be reports, as I say, coming out showing how this pilot has met the KPIs from the SEEV4-City project. I appreciate your time in listening to me today. And Philippe, happy to take any questions from the floor or answer anything that's come in on the Q&A.
Yes, I think we can indeed go over to the Q&A. So some questions popping up. Still see questions in the Q&A which are more related to the Amsterdam Arena project. My questions may be relevant. To people connect their EV systematically, isn't the risk for this project or maybe other projects if they don't participate? But the most important of this question is, what about the automatic charging impact? Do you have any idea about that, Chris?
Yes, I think there's still research ongoing in these areas. from our participation through Cenex and our sister company Cenex NL in Amsterdam, we see that the user experience and the customer experience of these in these trials and in these rollouts is really the neglected aspect. I was just reading a paper yesterday that summarized 500 or 600 other papers on vehicle to grid around the world, and the big areas that are missed are what happens about the user in their participation. We saw in Jan's presentation that over the Christmas period the EV was taken out for a drive, and also we see that in the projects that are running right now. So many of the companies currently deal with this by introducing a safety factor. So when they're bidding energy, they're always making sure that they are over provided. I'm sure there must be more intelligent ways to handle that, and I know of a project in local university in the UK. I'm sure there are similar ones in Europe, which is looking to produce kind of AI neural networks type learning to predict the likelihood that any individual user is near a charge point, able to be plugged in and able to provide services. So it's something that needs to be factored in. The other big thing is just helping people understand what is happening with their vehicles. And there was a question earlier, what if they need to go and drive somewhere? So factoring all that in makes this a really interesting technical and sociological or anthropological problem. And I'm sure there's plenty more research that some of my academic colleagues could do into this.
Okay. Take one question more. What's the current and future potential business cases for a vehicle to home system?
So we were just looking at this the other day as we were pulling our reports together. One of the things we have to do in the Interreg program is look at transnationality. How can this be scaled within a country and across the North Sea region? For vehicle to home, and I'm going to be really pedantic and take it as just that, so where the vehicle services the home only, I think the current and future business case is pretty much there is no business case. And that's simply because purely for providing services into the home, unless you're on a very strong, maybe Nord Pole style tariff, the value is quite low to the customer, and then you have to share that with an aggregator, and then you have to make back the money amortized on the hardware as well. I think if you expand to V4ES or V to G or V to X, depending on your particular acronym of choice, I think the current business case is okay. Speaking from the UK, around £300 to £400 per EV per year. In future, this might go up, but of course, as the number of vehicles that come on the system increases, the slice of the pie reduces. And so we might well see diminishing returns as flexibility is provided really well. That's a great question, Avi, and one that I'm sure all the partners in this project would love to keep looking at.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Chris. We're going to try to return to the other Chris. Chris Randall, are you back on track? I don't see anything coming up from Chris Randall. So we maybe can move on directly to Bert Berteler from the KU Leuven.
Do you want to try it again now?
There he is. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll just try it again. If I can't make it work this time, either I can just read from my notes, or we'll just have to slip it, and the presentation will come out with everyone else's presentation in due course. So I'll just try one more time again. Thank you for your patience.
Please.
Okay. Share screen. Let's try this. Share screen. Okay.
There we are.
Yeah, this is. I'm trying to. It's coming in the middle of the presentation. I don't know why the controls will not work. Look, I think I'm messing up this presentation. So shall we move to someone else? I have it here, but the controls are not working. I can't move it from.
Okay, now we move on to yeah.
Okay. Oh, I can do it now. I got it. Okay.
Fine.
I'm very sorry for this delay, and I think now we can go forward with this. So this is the Leicester operational pilot. Okay, just looking at my time there, through to about half past time. Okay,
No,
so
go
Leicester
ahead.
is in the East Midlands region of England. The Greater Leicester area there, that's the in the middle there, that's a population of about 650,000 people. We have a nitrogen dioxide pollution problem from transport. That's about 80% of the NO2 pollution comes from road transport. Approximately 25% of our carbon emissions also come from transport. So we are working for a cleaner transport system, and for some years now we've been part of that has been electric vehicle infrastructure. We've put in the top photo there, public facing charging points at certain of our car parks. We now have 17 electric vehicles, so we put in the charge points to support them as well, and that's going up to about 30 vehicles later this year. So there's great scope to increase the amount of active travel and public transport use in Leicester, but the need for electric vehicles will still remain. And if much of this is to be electric, then where does all this extra electricity come from? There is an increased role for decentralized electrical generation, such as on the guy's roof there. But we also need to use that energy in a smart and intelligent way. And that is where we arrive at this concept of vehicle for energy services right at the center of the SEEV4-City project. That is using electric vehicles to support energy infrastructure, whether it's the building or whether it's the grid. So originally Leicester's pilot was to be a vehicle to grid project, but it has evolved to be a vehicle to building project, or it will be a vehicle to building project, because our project is not installed as yet. Now, the chief reason we've had a lot of delays, and the chief reason is, don't really need to dwell on this, but the SEEV4-City project has coincided with a time of a lot of changes, reorganization with our facilities management department, and we're very dependent on them for information, guidance, and authorization for project delivery. They've lost key staff, and it's been hard to engage with them going through this scale of change. So we thought we could attempt to save a little bit of time and maybe simplify our project by moving from V to G to V to B, because that would avoid the whole aggregation aspect of the project of selling energy onto the grid. But as I say, we haven't recovered from all the delays, and my best estimate is installing in the autumn. So approximately this is what the vehicle to building system will look like, and I would very much like to thank Cenex, and in particular one Chris Rimmer, for his support in helping us get this far. As you see, the blue is the existing infrastructure, including the electric vehicle down there at the bottom, and the green is new equipment, the vehicle to building system equipment that we need to procure. Just for simplicity in the diagram, I've only shown one charge point. We hope to buy 4, that is cost dependent. For a long time in the development of the project, we expected that we could include the City Hall, which is our headquarters where this project is based, to include the City Hall building management system. But quite late on, we found out that that was contractually not possible. So we had to work out another way to get the key data that the vehicle to building interface needs, and that is the solar generation and the main supply data. It has to have that. If it can't come from the building management system, as you see there, we think we can install CT clamps on the solar supply and the main supply with communication to the interface, and that should cover that aspect. And then there will be 3 operational protocols, which I'll speak a little bit more about later. That is daytime, which is basically top-up charging, evening for the discharging, and overnight, which is the main recharging from the mains. So just a few design issues. We did consider static storage, perhaps 30 kilowatt hour static storage unit. This could assist with the daytime top-up charges. This could help with the main charge overnight. But we thought it was not value for money because of the expected energy losses as the coming down from the solar panels on 5 stories up, down into the storage and then on into the car. So we didn't do that. Then when we were looking at we have 4 Nissan Leafs, 3 at 24 kilowatt hour battery size and 1 at 30 kilowatt hour battery size in this project. We noticed there was no warranty cover in the Nissan warranty for bidirectional charging for 24 kilowatt hour chargers, battery size. So we had to talk with Nissan about this, and they said that there was no material reason why we could not use the 24 kilowatt hour vehicles for bidirectional charging. They're quite low mileage, distance traveled, and they're still quite new, 3-4 years old. So we can use them, but we will keep separate to the project a control vehicle, not in the project, to compare the battery health in case there are issues with bidirectional charging. Our DNO is a key stakeholder. We have our DNO is Western Power Distribution. We already have a generation agreement with them for our PV panels. That is for 21,000 kilowatt hour. We now need to increase this generation agreement by the estimated annual amounts that could potentially be available from 4 electric vehicles, and we estimate that at 15,000 kilowatt hours, which is based on actual charging data. So how the current situation works, things change, we hope, with V2B. Currently for EVs, they're all charging by 6:30 in the evening, and therefore they're drawing peak price electricity. And they're fully charged by mid to late evening, but they're not needed until 7 o'clock the next day. So there's a long time waiting on full charge. So with vehicle to building, the vehicles will be available for a controlled discharge to City Hall between 4 p.m. and 11 p.m. That's DUOS red and amber periods. And this will help City Hall meet its out of hours demand, which is something like 35 to 40% of the daytime demand. I think there's a lot of electrical systems in the office building, including the servers. The vehicles will then recharge overnight on a cheaper rate. The project will match solar generation and electric vehicle demand data for the same time periods, and we'll draw conclusions on the interaction of those 2 activities. Overall, I think we expect a small proportion solar to be consumed by the electric vehicles, but we hope these results will help analyze the efficacy of the vehicle-to-building bidirectional charging concept. So these are the protocols that will be programmed into the vehicle-to-building control interface. The evening, which is when the vehicles are available to discharge to City Hall, and the overnight when they recharge from the mains. We will initially gauge the state of charge of each vehicle as it returns home from work during the day, and then discharge down to a minimum of 20% state of charge, in line with the City Hall demand profile. With the overnight protocol, and coming back to what I was saying about the vehicles, lithium-ion batteries don't like being kept at for long periods at full charge, at a high state of charge. So perhaps we can use the smart functionality to pause the charge as we're starting to refill, pause the charge, say at 50% in the early hours of the morning, and then top up to full 100% by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, ready for another day's work. So this is how we hope we will be the 3 key objectives in the SEEV4-City project. I would just say in relation to the first objective, the electric vehicles come and go during the day as per the needs of the council services that they're supporting. If the data shows that there is a better time to get a higher solar input, it may not be easy to sync with that and and also achieve the service delivery for the council. And so that flags a possible future role for static battery storage to capture more solar and therefore increase the amount of solar energy going into the vehicles at the times when they do need to recharge during the day. So 2 more slides. I just hear the learning for Leicester from this project. I say we've still got a long way to go to install, but it has been a big learning exercise and a very valuable learning exercise. I think I would particularly flag the middle point there, that it flags the need for new energy transport skill sets. Personally, I am a transport planner. I have no energy background, but the vehicle for energy services concept creates a sphere where there is a combination of skills from both sectors is desirable. And so finally, as I say, because we are delayed, so we're very grateful also to our partners, Northumbria University, who are attempting to provide some simulated results on the basis of the information, the bullet point information there that I've provided to them. That's ongoing work at the moment. So hopefully we will find some idea of how our vehicle-to-building concept at City Hall Leicester works out. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. We managed at the end. It shows the complexity of doing webinars. It's not that easy at all. And it also shows that the complexity of vehicle-to-grid proposals is, it seems very obvious, but it's a very technical matter, complex matter. I see few Q&As, but we are running out of time. I would like to go directly to the next speaker, which is Bert Herteler from the KU Leuven. I propose that we do the other Q&As at the end of the session. Bert, are you ready?
I'm ready.
He's the most advanced of all of us. He has a dedicated background.
Yes. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So we have also a puzzle to assemble over time. So we'll describe what has happened at Kortrijk to date. So the city of Kortrijk is located in the northern half of Belgium in Flanders, indicated by the circle over there. The main partners that we have for the projects are KU Leuven, which has multiple campuses over in Belgium, the city of Kortrijk, and the University of Northumbria. In the case of the city of Kortrijk, they have participated voluntarily in SEEV4-City. So that means that they did not receive any direct financial compensation from the project, and that has affected some of the work that we've had to date. So if we look at the location, we have two consumption sites. You have the Depot 102, which has PV installed on the roof, and you have the sports center, which has high lighting loads in the evening. And throughout the year, though, most of the demand is in Depot 102. So at the start, the power information flows are as shown in the schematic here. So you have an annual demand of roughly 250 megawatt hours per year, a 78 kilowatt PV system, of which over the year about 20 megawatt hours is exported. So about 25% of its energy generation. They had a diesel van there that did roughly 10,000 kilometers per year, and that drives on weekdays to do postal deliveries for the city of Kortrijk between 7 and 3. And this schedule is important because it will be repeated with an electric vehicle later on. In terms of information, there was already a database that contained the demand and the PV production. So looking at the situation at the start, we have a case for improved solar capture, as well as looking at the potential of V2G and or even a battery electric storage system, because what you see in the figure completely on the left is the average hourly demand in the month per month. And there you see that, especially for the winter months, you have high evening loads, which is primarily driven by the lighting of the sports center. But then in summer, the base demand is low, but the PV generation is high. And so if you look completely to the right, there you see that there are several months in the year where there is export of the PV system to the grid. So purely from a financial perspective, for the Kortrijk depot, they lose a lot of money because that is remunerated at a much lower level than the cost of energy when they import it. So the project timeline. In September 2014, the PV system was installed. In September 2016, we had the start of the project. And that's when already the first of 4 master theses started at KUL. This one looked at the potential of an electric vehicle and relighting, so energy efficiency of the sports field. The second thesis then built on that to evaluate smart charging and V2G algorithms. And in that year, towards the end of 2017, the city of Kortrijk purchased an Nissan ENV200 van, which replaced the previous diesel van, and this vehicle is V2G capable. By the third year, we had a third master thesis going where the student was asked to do thermal tests of a V2G charger prototype to see how the V2G charger behaved during charging and discharging, and whether any changes would need to be done to the design, as well as looking at V2G in practice on the site. And now in a master thesis that is ongoing is looking at solar charging of e-bikes. In parallel with this, we looked at getting a custom lithium-ion battery energy system developed with a custom battery management system and additional to that, an energy management system to deal with all of the different power and energy flows in the system. Unfortunately, in September of 2018, it suffered a short circuit and was, even though it did not sustain serious damage, it was not considered safe enough for continued use. In the months afterwards, there was some personnel changes at KU Leuven. I started in March of 2019, and we had additional colleagues join the project at a later date. And so since April, we have looked at procuring a new lithium-ion battery system, doing the necessary developments associated with that, and making the required changes as well for the energy management system. And we were working to complete everything on time, and then we had the coronavirus lockdown. So that meant that all of the equipment that we had ready that was just about to be commissioned could not be done. And so we've now had to demonstrate a virtual operation instead of having everything there. That said, all of the components that we'll be showing later on have either been demonstrated in Kortrijk itself, for instance, with the EV and the V2G work, or the measurements have been done at the site of KU Leuven. So this is the second battery that we developed. In red, you can see the batteries themselves, and around that you have the equipment that we needed to put in there to ensure its safe operation. In terms of the procurement issues, there the budget was one potential problem. The availability on the market of batteries that could actually deal with our requirements was an issue. And then even if we found some that were good, the delivery dates were an issue. So this one can do 6 kilowatt hours, 2.5 kilowatts charge, 5 kilowatts discharge. And as you can see there, we developed the enclosure both for ingress protection as well as temperature control. And all of this is a Python-based energy management system. And yes, it was ready to be moved to Kortrijk, and then we had the coronavirus issues. Additional to this, we have the Ebike universal charging station, which was developed in a previous project and which was improved throughout first in the master thesis and additionally by colleagues. It accommodates up to 3 e-bikes. Each e-bike typically has a battery of 0.5 kilowatt hour. And it is controlled using a smart charging app for users. And the charging priority there is the ability to cycle home, which is typically around 20 kilometers. And then the improvements that we have here is looking to use the Ebikes spot price data for charging, as well as the scaling potential, so that you replace the e-bikes by EVs, or say calculate 100 e-bikes. So this video here shows how a bicycle is docked, how the system starts to determine the state of charge. And then once it has determined the state of charge, that it indicates the state of charge via the LED ring that you have there. At the end, you will see the app, and in that app, you see both the state of charge as well as the ability to undock or remove the bicycle from the charging station. So now the updated power information flows. We have the V2G charger, which has the one EV there, a 6 kilowatt hour BESS, and the solar charge station. In terms of the data and control flows, we use 2 individual Raspberry Pi sub-brains to communicate with the BESS and the charging station. And we have upgraded the database to also have the Ebikes spot prices to improve on the algorithms there. If we now take a look at a snapshot of the virtual operation, what you see here in the blue lines is either the charge or discharge of the EV. And so what we start there is the EV charging. It is stationed on the site. On a weekend, it charges during the day. And from 6 o'clock onwards, it does V2G. The battery is nearly empty. And then from midnight onwards on a weekday, it starts to charge to be ready for departure. Around 7 in the morning, it departs, it returns around 3:30 in the afternoon. It does some charging, and then afterwards it does V2G as well. And then to illustrate just the impact of everything, we have a line indicating what the power demand would be for 100 e-bikes responding to the excess generation, which you see in brown. If it was 3 e-bikes, the power draw would be negligible. And then lastly, we see the same behavior from the BESS. So overall, this is the preliminary impact of the project. We see that there was some additional CO2 emissions associated with charging the electric vehicle as well as the e-bike, but that the majority of the savings that we have now estimated for the vehicles is primarily in substituting the combustion engine for an electric vehicle or for an e-bike. So, coming to the last slide and lessons learned. In terms of procurement, there's still a lot of immaturity on the market, both on the hardware as well as the software. And then if you're looking to find potential companies that can provide those services, from the perspective of user acceptance, the trust in the solution and the reliability of that solution is key. And for the technology side, we have seen that having 2 separate batteries, a mobile and a stationary battery, can be very complementary, but you still need to look at the cost-benefit assessments, because the e-bikes, for instance, they cost a fraction of an EV, but are a lot cheaper. And before you even engage in that, you may even want to look at energy efficiency. And then on the regulatory or financial side, peak shaving is currently of limited value in Flanders, and that then flows into the financial benefits and business models. And with this, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert. Very interesting approach from another project. I think we are running short in time, unfortunately. Doesn't mean that it was not interesting and that we're going to move directly to Sarah. Sarah Holson is the project manager and director of the Interreg program, and she will come with final conclusions from her side. Sarah, are you there?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Philip. I am the person who comes with the non-technical expertise, and in the spirit of that, I'm going to start with a little story. 4 years ago this month, in fact, I started working for the Joint Secretariat of the Interreg North Sea Region Program. I was a novice. I was green behind the ears, as we say in English. I was completely new to the world of EU funding. I was new to projects on transnational cooperation. I was new to the theme of green transport and mobility. It took me a few months to get my head around the rules and regulations, given that we have so many. But as of June 2016, 3 months in, I still didn't have any projects to advise. The reason for this is that we had had only 1 call for applications up to that point. And because I was new, the projects had been distributed among my colleagues. But armed with my knowledge of the rules, and despite my relative lack of experience, I was feeling quite confident that month when I went to Billund, Denmark for the 2016 North Sea Conference to present to our stakeholders how things were going when it came to projects and project applications in our priority on green transport and mobility. But when I introduced what I thought was the one project that had been approved during our first call for applications, a hand in the front row of the audience shot up. "You forgot us," said the man to whom the arm belonged. I was completely flustered. How had I forgotten a project that we had approved? "It's SEEV4-City. We got the green light 3 months ago," he said. "Indeed," confirmed my colleague who was on stage with me. SEEV4-City had been approved in March 2016 through a special written procedure. Somehow, however, I had missed this very important point when I prepared my slides. And that was my introduction to SEEV4-City and to Hugo Niesing, the project manager at the time. Luckily, I was given the chance to redeem myself when I came to the SEEV4-City kickoff in September of that year in Amsterdam. My first impressions of the project are blurred, but some things still stand out to me. There was an electric energy among the partners in the room. The partnership was a dynamic balance of research institutions, private sector entities, NGOs, and public organizations. And the partnership had some quite ambitious goals. Oh, and not to forget that the people attending the meeting had a lot of questions about the rules and the regulations. Despite what you might think, from the funder's perspective, it's not just about the rules. We're also very interested in the content of our projects, even if we're not experts on the subjects they cover. And SEEV4-City has stood out from the beginning due to the approach it has taken to exploring and trialing ways to develop B2G and increase the use of locally produced renewable energy to charge electric vehicles. As I said, the project had very lofty goals when they started. Ultimately, like any project, they have faced hiccups along the way, but they have also overcome each one and made some outstanding contributions. I would classify these contributions in three main areas. First, innovations in the field. Second, a strong transnational bond. And third, results that show how well their approach has worked. I'll take each of these in turn. First, you have just heard from some of the partners in the project about some of the pilots. Others will be featured in the next webinar. This project has played a significant role in several cutting-edge developments in V2G technology and electric charging. From the City of Amsterdam's Flex Power project, which has increased the number of charging stations in the city and accelerated the growth in smart charging, to the Johan Cruyff Arena energy storage system, the first of its kind in the world, and one that has attracted the attention of stadium managers around the globe. And these are only two of the 6 pilots. In each case, the program has granted the project the freedom to experiment and try new things. Or at least we hope that that is the case, or that they see it that way. But due to procurement delays, staff changes, technological advances, decrease in political support, to name just a few of the challenges they've faced, the pilots have of course been redesigned, upgraded, adjusted. However, I can say that the partners in this project have made those adjustments continuously and forged ahead with a very positive attitude. The focus of this project is not scientific research per se. It is not a Horizon 2020 project, but there is a great deal of scientific research happening anyway. And this was brought up by Robert when he was talking about the applied research side of things. Philip, if you could show the first poll, please.
Yes, I will do that. Here it's coming.
Yeah, so this is just an item of interest. The project has had to fulfill quite a few deliverables and activities. And in fact, they did not include in their application academic publications. But on top of everything they've done, they have produced several academic articles, journal articles, as well as conference papers. So take a guess at how many they have been able to publish in the less than 3 years.
So votes are still coming in. I see. We wait a few seconds more. Okay, I think we're going to take it from here.
Yeah.
And we'll share the results.
And that's very good. In fact, it is 14. And you can find each of these, all of these, on the SEEV4-City website if you're interested. We're very happy with this output by the project, and we see this as a real advantage of the way they've worked together using the data from the pilots.
Okay.
The research the partners undertake stems from and simultaneously supports the on-the-ground pilots that explore how people actually use the technological innovations. That was point number one. Point number two, the North Sea Region program is what we call a transnational cooperation program. And Chris mentioned this in his talk. This means that the projects we fund must consist of partnerships representing several countries. In the case of SEEV4-City, that number is 4. They represent the Netherlands, Belgium, the UK, and Norway. While some of our projects, despite their best intentions, carry out their activities in isolated silos, this project, SEEV4-City, has grown and developed from the connections and links the organizations have made as partners. And I've seen this as I've read through their reports and met them at their various events. I see a respect for one another among the partners. I see a sharing of knowledge and expertise. The data that is created in the pilots is sent to the academics who then process, analyze, and write about it. And there's a genuine interest in learning how to implement one city's solutions to charging challenges in another city. Third and finally, the North Sea Region program requires projects to set themselves some quantitative targets when they apply, and to work toward reaching these targets by the end of their project. SEEV4-City included 3 in their application, and I'm eager to see how they play out in their final report, which will be sent to me later this year. But already I've seen the incremental progress toward one of them in particular, and here's the chance for poll number 2, Philippe.
Coming up.
So one of the indicators that this project decided to go for was a reduction in CO2 emissions resulting from the pilots they've undertaken. How far have they gotten by the end of August last year, which was the last report they submitted, or the report that covered the last period?
Votes are coming in. Counters are running. Give us a bit more time. People are apparently hesitating which choice will be the best. And we can take it from here, I think. And these are the results, as you can see.
Very good. The answer is actually the first one, 1,900 tons, or the equivalent of emissions from 809,000 liters of gasoline consumed. So this is a very good result. Up to now, it's far beyond the target that they had set for themselves, and we anticipate it'll be even further along when they submit their final report. So this is seen very positively by the program. In closing, I'd like to thank the SEEV4-City partners, especially the very competent lead beneficiary, Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, led by Robert, and first Hugo as project manager, and then Branya, who has managed over the second half of the project, several reports, changes to the project, an extension to the project, and so forth. They've made my first project advising job an interesting one, full of challenges and learning. I have to confess that I'm still far from an expert on this subject of V2G, but I can see how one could become immersed in it and completely focused on furthering the development of electrical vehicle charging. I hope that the pilots that they have established in this project continue to flourish, and that the project partners continue to collaborate past the end of the project, because what they've created during this project is work they can be very proud of, that we are extremely proud of at the program to call one of our own, and that there is potential to take this to another level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for these nice conclusions that you made for all the partners here present. I saw a few Q&A questions, but they're all being handled digitally. So I think we can conclude with our webinar. And thank all the speakers individually. Any last comments, Sarah, from your side?
I have followed this entire program for the past 2 hours with a lot of interest. And I have to say, I had been to 3 of the SEEV4-City events. And each time it's just amazing to me to see the expertise in this partnership and the amount of interest they're receiving from all around the world, from big companies like Niesing to small SMEs that are just interested in the topic, to academics, to government officials. I'm very, I would say, encouraged that the funding we've provided has really resulted in the project as it is now. And as I said already, we're really proud to be the funder of the project and hope that some of this can continue, whether through partners that continue to collaborate or pilots that continue on after the project ends officially.
Excellent. So we must say that this is not the end of the project. We indeed have 2 more webinars coming up. One is in 2 weeks, the 6th of May, with the vehicle to grid and smart charging, where we talk about the future symbiosis between emission-free transport and sustainable energy infrastructure. We have invited external speakers also from vehicle to grid purposes, so it will be an exciting session. Also, 2 weeks after that, the 20th of May, we talk about the policy learnings from the SEEV4-City project. What policies do we need for the future? This could be a very challenging topic with very much insights on the policy framework. So thank you for today. Thank you for attending. It was a very exciting afternoon. Keep in touch. Talk to you later. Bye.